In this video, we're breaking down Season 4 buffs, nerfs, new team-up ability, and team-up reworks. Okay, I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into it here. There is a lot for this particular... I'm going to tell you guys right now, I think this is one of the best season reworks, adjustments, updates, nerfs, buffs that they have done since Season 0. I'm not being hyperbolic here. I really believe this is one of the best that they have done, period. They are clearly listening to the community. Let's just jump in. I'm really excited about this. So starting with Vanguard's Captain America here, it says Cap's damage output is getting a slight downgrade. Remove team up anchor bonus, 5% damage boost. So he's effectively having a 5% damage nerf here. I do think this is warranted. It is a little bit weird. So Cap, he has a pretty a decent pick rate now. It's not super high. It's in niche applications and team comps, especially as you get into higher elo-ish. And when I say higher elo, probably past Grandmaster at this point in the season, I would say. He's got one of the highest win rates across all Vanguards in the game right now, across all ranks. I do think he was a bit overtuned. I do think that this change is warranted. It'll be interesting to see if it was the damage that needed to be reworked. I still think he's just a pinch too survivable. Maybe Cap mains would disagree on this, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Although I do think he needed a little bit of a nerf, just a little baby nerf. So this might be exactly that answer. We'll see how that happens. It's just really difficult in the backline. Like even if you're a cloak and dagger and you throw a bubble down on yourself, it's really hard to answer a Captain America if your team doesn't peel for you, which your team should be peeling for you. But what do the normal like platinum players, like how do you answer a Captain America if you're a Luna Snow? You use your freeze on him once and then it's impossible to outrun him, because by the time you actually turn around and then by the time you pick up speed to where you're actually trying to skate away, like Captain America is actually sprinting the entire time and he's just beating you down with his shield. Boom, boom, boom. So, I mean, it's really difficult to answer an oppressive Captain America. So I do think that this change was warranted. Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, is now casting faster, but he's trading a bit of survivability for offensive mystique. So they're going to reduce Maelstrom of Madness cooldown from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. This is massive. This cannot be overstated, I feel like. This is such a crazy buff to someone who already had a pretty great kit for dealing damage. I feel like Doctor Strange was actually sort of slept on in season 3.5. My prediction for season 4 moving forward, I think Doctor Strange gets moved into S tier because of these changes. You can see right below it says reduce base health from 600 to 575. I think that's completely irrelevant for his HP pool. I think the fact that he can use his Maelstrom of Madness, which is on keyboard and mouse at least, it's his E ability where release the dark magic. Whenever you do that, you're telling me that AoE is up every 6 seconds now? You're absolutely going to feel that. There are so many times when I'm in matches, whenever I get ready to release dark magic and I want to use my ultimate or whatever the case, but I just used it previously, that difference of 8 seconds there is the difference between for me being able to use it in a team fight or not. So I feel like this is a great change if you're a Doctor Strange main, and if you're not, I feel like he might be a bit too heavy-handed, but I am here for it. I am ready for some more Doctor Strange in the meta. I know a lot of people might not be, but the Doctor Strange, this bumps him up a clear tier. If he wasn't already in like your A tier, he's in A tier now. If he was in your A tier, I believe he absolutely gets bumped into S tier now, no question. Emma Frost, the White Queen's control and survivability are getting a little less unbreakable. Increased diamond form cooldown from 15 seconds to 18 seconds. So this is a nerf, and you're going to notice that with your actions per minute over time, especially in higher elo, which is what I think this is aimed to help with, at least with this particular one. I didn't see Emma's going into diamond form off of cooldown, but it will be relevant even in the metal ranks. And I think this other bullet point here, reduced telepathic pulse, energy gained when hitting shields from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. Let me read to you what Emma Frost actually, like how her ammo consumption is actually used, because I bet even Emma mains don't necessarily know this. So her energy gain, whenever she hits a hero, it goes from, it charges 10 per second. However, if you hit a sentience, if your sentience hit, if you're hitting that, That's 15 per second, the charge is. And then common summons hit would be 5 per second. And a shield hit was 10 per second. Now it is 5 per second. I don't think this is a crazy nerf here whatsoever. I also think it's warranted, like for the Captain America's backing up or whatever the case. I do think that you will see this impact Emma a little bit, but not a ton. I think that this one is a little bit more of a nothing burger, but that increased diamond form cooldown, that's a pretty substantial change. And I think it's more relevant the higher you get in rank. Do I think this knocks Emma down a tier? I don't think so. I think she goes from maybe, like, for example, if she was your top of S tier, she might get placed more toward the bottom of S tier, or if she was in your A tier, maybe now instead of being at the high end of A tier, maybe she's in the middle or at the bottom of A tier. I don't think this really impacts her too much, though. She's still incredibly strong. If she's your main, I wouldn't be worried about this change. Peni Parker. Enemies caught in Penny's webs are in for a stickier situation, and her ultimate ability just got slightly more threatening. Spider drone, new effects. Now slows hit enemies by 8% for 2 seconds. That's crazy. So her spider drone, like those are the little baby mine things that explode. So it now slows hit enemies by 8% for 2 seconds. 2 seconds is a long time in this game too. And each hit stacks the effect and resets the slow period, stacking up to 40%. That's insane to say out loud. Stacking up to 40%. In addition to this bottom bullet point doesn't sound all that crazy, but when you couple it with the new spider drone effect, this is crazy. So you reduce spider drone release interval during ultimate ability from 0.7 seconds down to 0.5 seconds. So that is also a buff. It takes less time between intervals of spider drones releasing. So you're just going to see them at a faster rate now, coupled with the fact that hit enemies now are slowed by 8% and it stacks. This is a pretty sizable buff for Peni Parker. So in the metal ranks, Penny's going to be absolutely even more dominant than she already was. And we all know there are all kinds of teams that simply refuse to answer her nests. This is really going to be felt now. And I think at this point, even teams that refuse to answer her before are going to be forced to answer her now, or you will simply lose, especially in those metal ranks. Like, I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. I think Penny is going to be so scary if you're in lobbies under Celestial, and honestly probably even Celestial sometimes. Half of the teams you get, it seems, people just don't want to shoot her mines. I get it, it can be boring, it's a chore, sometimes they're out of reach from you, sometimes your kit isn't designed to be able to take out Penny's nest safely, and I understand that, but not every single person on your team is not going to be able to answer her. So I feel like people are going to have to step up in order to nullify this pretty crazy buff. I think she's going to be even more of a menace in the middle ranks, and it's going to be upsetting for most. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in high elo. I still think you're not adjusting. Let's really break this down. You're not adjusting anything else that she's able to do as far as her shooting cadence or her damage that she does. Yes, she's able to crit, but does that truly matter? How is she going to be able to answer good flying enemies? Yes, you can web trap people, but you're not going to be able to get that stun on a good Iron Man who's in the sky. So maybe this bumps her up by like 1% as far as like win rates in even high elo, but I still think it's incredibly niche circumstances that you're going to see her played, and I don't think it changes hardly anything here, other than she's even more annoying now. Thor, the God of Thunder's ultimate is getting an upgrade. More speed, new stun, greater Bring the Thunder. Increase movement speed during ultimate ability from 600 to 700. So I don't know exactly how this is going to play out in real time, but that is a sizable speed boost. But when you couple that, so after your ultimate ability lands, stun surrounding enemies for 1 second, not half a second. And again, if you really count out like 1 Mississippi, like 1 second, that's a pretty long time in this game. It really is. And that's after the fact that your ultimate landed. And we're going to break this down later, but Thor has an insane team up with Angela. And the fact that you just partially reworked and buffed his ultimate, I think Thor goes from a decent tank to unquestionably a strong tank. If you have an Angela team up, I think he becomes oppressive actually, and I think this goes across most ranks. When you get into super high tier, I don't know if it's going to be enough, but we'll break down the team up with Angela as well, and we'll see if there might be some play there. But otherwise, just standalone, this isn't enough to change that for him. But with the team up, that's when things get interesting. Now we're switching gears onto the Duelists here. So this Black Panther rework, I think most people were waiting to hear something about Black Panther being done. You saw ban rates go through the roof for most ranks against Black Panther. So it says T'Challa's survivability after striking a marked enemy is now less pingly. Reduce bonus health gained when striking vibranium marked enemies with Spirit Rend from 30 to 25 and whatever to that. But reduce base health from 300 to 275. So in a way, he's kind of indirectly getting a 30 HP nerf whenever he's effectively using his kit, but otherwise a 25 HP nerf like to your base at all times. That will make a difference. And again, in higher ranks, I think this really lowers his efficacy. But I'm really trying to think, again, if you're someone who's like maybe in bronze or you're in gold and you're like, man, how many times are you actually saying that Black Panther is legitimately like 3 HP? I'm not sure. Even in rank, even when I'm climbing in the beginning of the season, or I wait on ult accounts or whatever the case, and I'm playing the game and we're playing against a good Black Panther player, I anecdotally, so keep this in mind, I anecdotally haven't seen a ton of legit 1 HP Black Panthers skirt away. They're often like a quarter HP or like even close to like half HP whenever they're running away. And these are good Black Panther players, by the way. Will the 25 HP nerf be noticed? Yes. How much will that actually affect every game with good Black Panther players? I'm not so sure. And good Black Panther players in the metal ranks. Again, I know we keep bringing this up, but this is going to be for most people who this affects. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. I'm sorry to say, if you hate Black Panther, he's still going to be just as strong. And yes, he's a little bit more squishy now, but that wasn't exactly the issue with your team answering him. It was the fact that nobody could hit him whenever he's dashing around. That part doesn't change at all here. So I feel like that's just simply not being addressed, and whoopsie. But let's move on to Blade here. The Daywalker sword just got a little sharper, more melee damage for those who hunt in the night. Increase ancestral sword damage per single slash from 22 to 24. Yes, this was needed. I heard a lot of people in the community mentioning that his sword just felt a bit weak, and honestly, even his gun at certain ranges feel a bit too soft as well. It'll be interesting to see if they rework that later. But Blade's got a pretty big hitbox. He is tanky, so it helps counteract that. It makes sense since he gets up in front of your face a lot, and that's how he can get a lot of his utility out, is by being up and brawling. He's up in the action. But increasing every single slash from this character from 22 to 24, which is just over a 9% increase, that's a sizable increase. So you're almost saying a 10%. If I told you they're buffing his sword damage by 10%, you would say, hey, that's a sizable buff. So this is a sizable buff. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts win rates. It will impact things. I don't know how often Blade players are only using his sword. I feel like it's used quite a bit, because so often, even when you're using a ranged character, you just get forced into these brawl situations, even all the way up through high elo, and even in the pro scene, like when a character's kit isn't designed to be brawling, you just are thrust into that situation. I think this is a good rework for Blade, or not a rework, just a buff in general, and I look forward to seeing if this will be enough. I have a feeling this isn't going to be quite enough for him, but I could be wrong. Well, let's be honest, I'm not going to be wrong, am I? That's a joke, by the way. I was joking. Magik. Woo, doggy, this is a lot, so buckle up for this. Magik loses her team up anchor bonus, but gets a whole arsenal upgrade to compensate. Remove team up anchor bonus, 15% damage boost, and that's why you see a lot of items down below, and I want to address that as well. We'll address that in just a second, but reduce charge time required for Magic Slash, maximum damage from 1.8 seconds to 1.2. So in this case, you're reducing the charge time, which is going to be a buff here, which is a noticeable buff. Actually, you go from 1.8 to 1.2. That's sizable. That's going to be felt for Magic mains. And then Magic Slash new effect, projectile now pierces enemies and reduces stepping disc cooldown by 1 second per enemy pierced. I don't know why this is being reworked here, but this already makes an incredibly strong character even stronger. Now we get into what looks like nerfs, but it's really just counteracting, or buffs, but it's just counteracting the anchor bonus that we saw previously. Increased soul sword damage from 65 to 75. Again, remember she just had a 15% damage nerf because she lost her team up. So 65 to 75 is just a hair over 15%. So they're just replacing what was cut from the team up. Increase Eldritch Whirl damage from 45 to 50. And you can see the rest of it, they rework a little bit. It's around that 15% mark. So it makes you question, like, I don't see the vision of keeping the team up anchor bonuses if this is going to be implemented every single time for every single hero. I would like to see more consistency around just straight up buffs and nerfs rather than throwing in team up anchors and then nerfing the effective damage they do for the season. That just makes these breakdowns really convoluted, and I feel like it's an unnecessary step at this point. And again, during Dark Child ultimate ability, increase Eldritch Whirl single hit damage from 35 to 45. We already talked about the 15% buff. And Umbral Incursion damage from 135 to 140. Nothing new here. But I want to circle back to the top here when we're talking about reduces charge time required for Magic Slash, maximum damage from 1.8 to 1.2. That's crazy. That's when you're winding up and getting ready to shoot your air slash at an enemy. And then right below that, a new effect where it now pierces enemies and reduces stepping disc cooldown by 1 second per enemy pierced. This is a crazy buff. This is going to be excellent for increasing not only your actions per minute, just from the fact that there's less wind up here, but you're getting even more out from the wind up itself. You could already position yourself to take out flyers who were sitting still for just a pinch too long. And yes, this even happens in high elo more than what you might think, but you're now going to be able to consider in the moment, in a brawl, if you want to charge up a Magic Slash, since it's taking just a hair over 1 second as opposed to pushing 2 seconds previously. You could now use Magic Slash in the moment against that Luna Snow who you were already actively attacking. Or if you briefly stepping disc, portal, teleport away, kind of juke them for a second, turn right around toward them again with your new really quick to charge Magic Slash. There's a lot that you can do with this. And there's going to be more from Magic later. Moon Knight. So Moonblade now holds up to 2 charges. So it goes from 1 to 2, and each one takes 6 seconds to recharge, which is fine. But you're talking about on PC, that would be your right click, this Moonblade attack, which does 80 damage as opposed to your primary. Just for context for anyone who might not mean Moon Knight, your primary, which does 25 per hit. So you're talking about 80 per hit, being able to do that twice now. This is a good change, I feel like, for Moon Knight. It gives you more 1v1 potential for that burst damage that you completely lacked for almost every other hero in the game whenever you go to 1v1 someone or duel someone or try to get value if you're on a flank. This increases your combo potential, not only against groups, but again, in that 1v1 scenario, which I feel like was critically missing for Moon Knight to be able to hold his own. I think we start seeing Moon Knight moved up a complete tier just because of this change alone. I don't know what it's going to look like. Again, the metal ranks are always so fun to see what these changes do. This doesn't make him busted in low ranks now, but I feel like this does move him up a clear tier now. Psylocke. Size burst damage has been slightly dialed back. Decrease the retrieve damage of wing shurikens per hit from 12 to 8. So your wing shurikens, just for clarification, that is not your primary. That's going to be, again, on PC, your right click ability. From 12 to 8 though, just to do some math here, that's just over 33% nerf. That is going to impact all kinds of combos you were able to do before, like against 250, 275, 300 HP heroes. Well, really any HP hero, but often Psylocke is fantastic for taking out Duelists and Strategists who are around that HP total. And this is going to significantly change the impact that you have around those engagements. Psylocke mains just received a 33% nerf to their offhand ability. This doesn't make her useless. This doesn't make her obsolete. This just changes how you go about interacting. She becomes more of a technically challenging hero to get exceptionally great value out of now, but she's still incredibly strong. On my list, she goes from like high A tier to just the bottom of A tier now. Scarlet Witch. Wanda's survivability and ultimate are getting a magical upgrade. Can now be healed by teammates during Mystic Projection. Increase reality erasure damage from 800 to 9,999. So I'm not totally sure if this is a typo or not. If these numbers are accurate, which we have no reason currently to believe they're not accurate, you have to assume that you either have to try to CC stun Scarlet Witch out or use some sort of shield that it doesn't matter. Like if as long as you have 1 HP left on Doctor Strange's shield, for example, it can still block certain ultimates. So you still have that aspect, but otherwise, if your shield is down in this case as a, let's say Groot, and you had some bonus HP, so you had over 800 health, let's say, or even a Venom, and you used your ultimate as Venom, and you have over 1,000 HP as Venom, you're still going to die to that Scarlet Witch ultimate if it seriously does 9,999 damage. So this does change quite a bit. That just makes her ultimate that more scary, and it's going to be an interesting dynamic now because people were afraid of Scarlet Witch's ultimate before, where you kind of start backing up when you're like, oh no, we're not going to kill her in time for her ultimate to get off, and people start backing up and they miss more shots because of that. Well, now you know it's a guaranteed death for anyone if she gets that ultimate off, if you don't have a tank that you can trust on your team, which, well, that's another discussion. So again, if this is true, this is going to change her ultimate by quite a bit here, actually. It already did a ton of damage before, and you're like, well, it could kill almost anyone in the game before. Well, if they had bonus HP again, or whatever the case, or you're consistently healing them up, this changes quite a bit. And a new effect now pulls in nearby enemies within a 15-meter radius during cast charge. Max pull speed is up to 2.4 meters per second. This is quite a substantial buff to her ultimate. There were situations before when it just made sense to just get out of dodge from her ultimate, and there are going to be times still, even with this being said, that it makes sense to run away from her ultimate. But if it is pulling you in, and if you're within that range, you're absolutely forced to deal with this ultimate now. So it might end up working against Scarlet Witch mains. It's going to be really interesting. It's even more so team dependent now on what sort of team you have, on how you go about answering her ultimate. My advice for handling Scarlet Witch's ultimates moving forward, it's always been just either get out of the way or kill her or save a CC to get her out of her ultimate. But now I feel like you're more so just forced to count whenever and keep track of whenever her ultimate is up, and just keep that 1 CC stun ability in your back pocket specifically to answer that. That's an interesting one though. Squirrel Girl. Doreen is less of a menace from afar. Reduce burst acorn damage from 110 to 100, so effectively 10% nerf there. Increase the hit damage of Squirrel Blockade from 35 to 50. This is whenever you imprison enemies and lock them down, sort of CC stun them for a while. So the hit damage from that goes from 35 to 50, which is pretty noticeable actually. And then you increase Mammal Bond cooldown from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. That's a nerf. This is what enables Squirrel Girl to be able to use another ability without having to wait for the cooldown. But that cooldown itself was effectively nerfed by 50%. So really what this is going to end up doing is it impacts her dive ability. She's not going to survive as much now. She's not going to be able to double bounce away as quickly as she did before. That's a really big nerf there. But also, we're talking about a 10% across the board just spam nerf, which I think is a good thing. How many times did you die to a Squirrel Girl in this past season where you know she wasn't aiming at you, she was just spamming down a hallway and it bounced and it killed you, or whatever the case, or it killed your entire team, it took down both of your tank shields and everything else? This was definitely implemented for the middle ranks, and I think that's fine how they go about addressing different skill levels within this game by implementing certain buffs or nerfs. This is good for the game's longevity. Winter Soldier. Bucky is getting a handy improvement to his close quarters control. Trooper's Fist, new effect. Second Strike now applies a 1-second debuff to enemies hit, preventing them from using mobility abilities. I've been telling you guys for well over a full season now that Winter Soldier needed a pinch more. Unless you're in super high elo or in the competitive scene, Winter Soldier needed a pinch more. Statistically, he has a pretty low win rate, and that comes down to the amount of people who are picking him, and it's just he's used in wrong situations, and just the way that his kit is designed, he's just used incorrectly quite a bit as well, and that's a different discussion. But just to be clear, this is his dash uppercut ability that we're talking about. So not only does it sort of CC stun them, but it's also going to prevent them from using mobility immediately after that as well. This makes him incredibly dangerous up within that dashing range now. I did not have Bucky in A or S tier last season. However, this does move Bucky up a clear tier for me. Whatever tier he was in for you before, if he was anything below A, he is now bumped up a full tier in my opinion. Moving on to Strategists, Invisible Woman. Sue Storm's control and ultimate abilities just got more fantastic. I love the little things they do like this. I love the puns. Increased slow effect to enemies passing through Guardian Shield from 30% to 35%. That's a decent one right there. And then this I feel like was needed now. Increase invisible boundary, which is her ultimate ability, healing per second. Instead of it healing 165 per second, it's now 180 per second. This will be a difference maker when certain teams try to stack ultimates or certain abilities on top of each other to kill people out of that invis ult. So that makes her ultimate more potent. And also because you're going to see in a little bit, the Luna Snow nerf, I think, well, this definitely makes Invisible Woman more viable. And a new effect slows enemies within range by 20%. So now with this slow ability here, this is just space that you're not really effectively going to be able to answer unless you have, I would say, borderline hyper mobility. Like for example, if you're a Venom trying to dive or something like that and you can easily swing out or something. But if you're someone like a Magneto or even someone like an Emma Frost, you're going to want to think twice about how you interact with an enemy Invisible Woman's ultimate. So this is a really strong buff for Invisible Woman. Again, I keep saying this, I didn't have her in S tier for the last couple of seasons now. Again, I think that this bumps her up a complete, like a full tier, like no questions asked, maybe even more so. This is a really big buff for Invisible Woman. I would be cheering, I would be shouting from the rooftop if I was an Invisible Woman main. Jeff the Land Shark. Jeff's ultimate leaves a healing pool after use. Dive in for some aquatic rejuvenation. It's Jeff. Ultimate ability now leaves an 8-meter radius healing pool at the point of activation that heals allies within range by 100 per second. Healing pool lasts for 8 seconds. This is crazy. This is really big for Jeff means. Jeff actually was seeing quite a low win rate percentage whenever he was picked in comp, and it's because of this exact reason here. And I've seen quite a bit of Jeff's, again, just anecdotally recently, and it's really felt whenever Jeff goes in for that ultimate, and even when he does get one or more enemies in that ultimate, it's like great, but my entire team is effectively down a strategist during this time. We're not getting a healing ultimate during this time, and if Jeff only grabs one key player, which often it ends up being that, even if he grabs a couple of enemy players, there's still damage being done to your team that if you have a normal 2-2-2 sort of comp setup, it puts a lot of pressure on your single strategist. Fingers crossed that they're still up at that point, even when your Jeff does decide to ultimate, which the higher you get in ranks, you'll be a little bit more mindful about that, but sometimes it's just difficult to play around that or to time those engagements properly. So this is a crazy, crazy big buff for Jeff Means. Jeff Means, rejoice. Your character just got even simpler to use, which is not a knock against Jeff Means. It's just, this is really good utility for everyone who happens to interact with Jeff, whether you're using him or you're playing against him or you're playing with him. On to Loki. Less damage, healing, and ultimate ability active time for the God of Mischief. This is kind of crazy when you just read this at the surface level here. Reduce illusions damage and healing ratio from 100% to 80%. That's a sizable nerf. And reduce God of Mischief, which is his ultimate ability, shapeshift period from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. So you're reducing that time period that you have effectively to copycat someone. If using an active duration ability, for example, Luna Snow's ultimate ability, which often happens, especially in the competitive scene, reduce shapeshift residual period after the ability ends from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. These are just nerfs across the board here. So you're really impacting your healing efficacy as Loki, like by quite a bit here. Your damage and your healing because of your illusions getting a 20% haircut. But on top of that, your ultimate ability is just changing by a substantial period as well. Coupled with that, we're going to go ahead and use this to position ourselves into the Luna Snow discussion now. And keep listening if you're watching the Loki section. But for Luna Snow, her ultimate ability duration is getting cooled down. See, we do nerf her. They do listen. It's crazy how involved they are. Like on X, for example, they do read our conversations, by the way. So keep vocal, keep engaged. If you want to see a change in this game, it's very possible that they're at least aware of what the discussions are currently. So they're going to reduce Fate of Both Worlds, which is Luna Snow's ultimate ability duration, from 12 seconds to 10 seconds, which is indirectly a nerf to Loki as well, because again, Luna Snow is one of the most formidable teammates to copy, or even if she's an enemy that you copy as Loki, for that strong ultimate. So that ultimate time is nerfed too. So this is in a way kind of a double nerf to Loki mains. So don't get me wrong, Loki is still incredibly strong. If he was in S tier before, if he was in the top of S tier, this might bump him down to the bottom of S tier. And we'll see. I think he still stays in S tier for the vast majority of ranks, but he might be unusable in like diamond and below. And that's just because if you're not a good Loki player, you're almost like a bad Loki player, just because there's quite a bit you have to keep in mind with this character. So for most of the people watching this, I feel like you're just going to see quite a few less Lokis moving forward. And for Luna Snow, although it is a nerf, they didn't change anything else about her kit except for her ultimate, which you only use for like 5 to 10% of the entirety of all of the rounds that you're playing. So yes, that 2 seconds, you're gonna feel that. However, how many times do you realistically ult during one round, for example? It's a nerf, but it's not a massive nerf. So Luna mains, I think you can breathe a little bit here. You're gonna feel it, but not too much. Mantis gets a little more slippery. Movement boost from nature's favor now decays to 0 after 2 seconds after being hit, instead of instantly disappearing. So the way that I'm reading this and the way that I understand this is your passive ability. So whenever an enemy hit you before, it actually would instantly slow you and you wouldn't move as quickly as if you were not in combat, for example. However, it's saying instead of someone hitting you and then instantly you're slow, you're going to gradually start to get to that slower pace over the course of 2 seconds. So again, you are a little bit more slippery, because as soon as someone hit you, it's like you stepped into quicksand and you were instantly much easier to hit. That's not going to be the case now. And over this 2 second duration, you're going to have a changing of your speed as well, which is going to be extra tricky and trippy for the opponent to try to gauge and get used to that. So I think for this specific season right now, before people get used to that, this is a pretty nice buff, actually. It's going to be, I think, bigger than what most people think. So yeah, you're not going to see like a ton more Mantis mains because of this specifically or anything, but this is a noticeable buff. And couple that with her really strong team up with Groot and Loki, this is a good buff. Ultron's ultimate now deals extra pain. No defense is too strong for the AI Overlord. Ultimate ability, new effect, deals 125% damage to bonus health. Just so everyone's on the same page here, so your base ultimate is going to do 100% damage. So you're going to do 125% damage to bonus health. So any type of bonus health that you get, think of like a rocket pack that you pick up and you got an extra 25 HP and that's bonus health. Or like a Venom, you use your ultimate and you have bonus health during that period. Ultron now will do 125% damage to that bonus health, which is actually a pretty big deal, because normally whenever you're shooting someone's bonus HP, you are not getting ultimate charge during that time, and good players will not always target you because you have that massive bonus HP that you're working with. Especially, again, I keep bringing up the Venom example. It's one of the best in the game though, because it can get so absurd if you get a fat ultimate off. But think of a rocket ultimate. Even if the enemy team is in a rocket ultimate and they have bonus health now, well, Ultron is a pretty good counter to that. So you pop your Ultron ultimate during that time period. Now this is going to get really interesting, and this is a nice buff for Ultron, but it's very niche, so I think it keeps him in check overall. And what they're not doing here, they're not making Ultron just a heal bot in this case, which is great. We can stay away from just having every strategist have a heal bot ultimate. This is really cool. I like the direction. I like the way they're thinking here. I want more of these kind of changes. This is a great change. Okay, now we're on to the team up abilities. Stay with me here. We're going to try to get through these quickly. Divine Armory. So with the new hero, the new Vanguard, Angela and Thor as the team up anchor, Angela gains 100 health and Thor gains the new Thunderstrike Pike ability from his team up with Angela. So as you can see here, this gives him the ability to throw a Thunder Spear that restores Thor force upon hit. And after, Thor can leap to the spear's impact point, dealing a second wave of damage to all enemies within range. For Dimensional Shortcut, Magik and Psylocke here, this team up has been banished to Limbo and removed from the game. Black Panther loses the Wakandan Master ability previously attained from his team up with Magik. And that's why we discussed this piece here, because now Magik joins the Order and unlocks the new magical chain of the Torak ability through her team up with Doctor Strange. So she's with Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch. And her new ability, she can unleash a chain of Sidorak that links two enemies and slows them. And the farther they are apart, the greater the slow effect afflicted during the link. And then you also have Gamma Charge here, which is Hulk, Namor, and Black Panther. Black Panther joins the Gamma Fund and gains the Gamma Vibranium Armor ability through his team up with Hulk. Yes, it's what do you think? Yes, it's a big green bubble. His Vibranium Armor now gets a boost from the Gamma Energy. When his HP drops below a certain threshold, he automatically activates a Gamma Shield to block incoming damage. And last, but certainly not least, Arcane Order, Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, Magik. Looks like the arcane magic is getting a bit weaker for Scarlet Witch. Reduce sorcery surge explosion damage upon hit from 12 to 6. So this is just for the team up. This only affects Scarlet Witch, but it is a 50% nerf on that bonus damage that she was getting before. It's still going to be strong. It's still a really good team up. This doesn't change a whole lot, especially because you just giga buffed her ultimate. So them be the changes for the updates for season 4. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. I love the direction that Marvel Rivals is going. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. They've never reached out to me. I haven't reached out to them or anything like that. I love this game. I love how open they are to getting feedback from the community, from even the very beginning of them listening to feedback as far as how they go about resetting ranks at the beginning. They just told us recently as well, this is fresh off the press as well, as of yesterday, as of the recording of this video anyway, that they're looking at doing placement matches as soon as they can. It's clear they really care. They're doing really cool things with this game. And I also see a lot of new updates coming out in these different modes and everything else that they're implementing that we might not touch on as much with this particular channel, but they really do care. And I do see that they have a vision for long term for this game too, that they kind of want it to be like a Roblox or like a Fortnite where they implement these different modes. And yeah, it might cannibalize the player base a little bit as far as what they're spending their time on, but they're spending time in game, building that community, building that interest, and it's Marvel at the end of the day. And I know we all really like Marvel. Marvel's super cool. That's why we're here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate just all the support that you give me. Please feel free to join the Discord, subscribe if you are new around here, if you do want to see other guides, other updates, breakdowns, and how to get better at Marvel Rivals in general. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time.